Let's talk sales process. Let's close some. I was like, what's a good name for this? We'll see how it goes. Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to go through this like V1, and then we'll take a quick break here. Jake Dunlap, Scale Up CB. Don't forget, hashtag. All right. Okay. All right, so the question I had from before, I'm going to ask you guys right now. What's not working in your sales process today? So we talked a little bit about what you want to get out of this, so I have an idea. What are the things that are broken? Why are deals going long? Why aren't we closing more deals? What was it? What, can you elaborate?
I guess a lot of our potential customers don't quite understand what network speeds might be like or the different technologies that are offered.
Okay. So your buyers aren't educated on what's possible. So we'll call this like, I'll just call it buyer education, okay? Or they're just unqualified, which is fine too. Timing's just not right now. Fine. What else?
The customer is not well defined. Your best customer.
We'll call it like chasing everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. What else? What about you guys? Why aren't deals closing? Okay. Why is that happening, do you think?
I think that there is a decision maker with our customers. It's a decision by committee, so you basically got to talk to the wrong people.
Yep. So it's either the right person or persons. What else?
Poor process.
What's up?
Poor process.
What's the first word?
Poor process.
Poor process.
Process.
Poor process. What's poor about it? What in particular? What feels like it's just not working for you? Like what?
Well, I think like giving up too soon, not having the cadence that you talked about.
Okay. So are people going dark or just not getting back to you?
Going dark.
Okay. Okay. What else? Why else are we losing deals? Yeah?
Buyer distrust over the phone, like to
Okay.
purchase a larger product over the phone without seeing or touching it.
You said money earlier. Like they don't have any money. That's what you said yesterday?
Me?
Yeah. No. Her. No, her right here. Does it look like I'm? No, I'm right here. I can point at you too. That's all good. What else? What else are some reasons that people aren't closing?
With fear of change, and a lot of stuff like that.
Sure. That is what you lose to in almost every case. Outside of like an RFP process, you lose to no decision most of the time. You lose to status quo. That's most deals. That's why you lose. You come in, you get their interest a little bit sparked, and they just, oh yeah, this is good. Let's talk in Q1. It's like one of the main reasons, fear of change. Yep.
Yeah, I was just about to say a version of that is sort of unseating the incumbents. There's
Okay.
a sort of a small group of incumbents
Yep.
that are on the inside, and it's kind of being able to break through.
Okay, these are good. So I'm going to call it like competition or like the current product
Yeah.
they're using, which is also kind of a variation
it's
of.
a similar, yeah.
It's a variation of it. Okay, cool. Okay. Anything else like painful? Anything where it's like, man, we just lost a deal? Any deals you guys have lost recently that sting? And why? Cost? You just lost a big deal because of price? What did they tell you? Too expensive? Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah?
Change their requirements. The expectations that change. I don't know. How bad.
That's okay. We'll talk about that, man. It happens all the time. Time kills deals. Time is the enemy of sales because that's exactly what happens. Their business changes. Like their priorities change, and like it happens. We're all running businesses. Yeah. What do you? Oh, they have competing goals or just different goals?
It's like it's not that we wanted to sell something, but I wanted to buy something like software from a company.
Yeah.
And two different sales reps quoted two different prices for the same exact product. The price difference was like $500 between those two.
Right.
So one was close to $3,500, the other one was close to $4,000, and I was thinking, what is going on? That's not that.
They were selling to you.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't fix that. That's just like bad sales. You know, like I can't fix like not like people. Yeah, that's interesting that you played it against. It's smart. That's what you should do. Just so you know, all of you should only buy software the last day of any quarter at 5 p.m. By 100% of every one of those technologies that I just told you, 5 p.m. last day of the quarter. Most of their quarters, just so you know, they sync with Salesforce's calendar. Salesforce's fiscal ends at the end of January, so their month off. December 31st, I promise you, is the best day to buy software. December 31st, or again, if they run on Salesforce, January 31st. Best time to buy Salesforce, January 31st, 5 p.m. No, we don't have any discounts. Nope. Wow, hey, what's going on, Aaron? Hey, what's up, man? Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, look, if we can do it, great, let's do it. If it's not, it's not. I'm telling you, only buy software on the last day of the month, last day of the quarter, last day of the year at 5 p.m. So there's more of like a sales tip for the buying when you're buying software. SaaS companies hate it, but like, you know it's true. Like, you know it's what happens. End of the month, you're like, get it there. All right, discount. Okay, this is plenty. We can work with this. Okay, cool. The good part is like most of this is solvable. I can't help reps that quote different prices for the most part, I think. Okay, all right, next. What's your sales process today? So I'm just gonna ask a couple of you to walk me through your sales process today. Let's go with like yours is like a $2,500 product. Let's do yours, and yours is an enterprise product. So let's do you two guys. Let's just walk through it. And I think some of you will be, you have to think of what I'm going to talk about today. The sales process is like an accordion. Like there's kind of like a middle case. That's what I'm going to talk about, like a middle case. And then if it's an enterprise deal, it stretches out. If it's a SMB deal, it shrinks in. But the steps are kind of like similar. So let's start with yours. So what's the first initial engagement point? Your reps are cold calling, right?
Yeah, so we have leads coming through. We market to Facebook, so the leads will come through.
Yep.
Every BDA gets tasks assigned to them with those leads.
Yep.
So we'll call. Our cadence right now is 4 calls, 4 emails.
Yep.
Then we create them stale if we didn't connect. But if we do connect on that call, we'll sales qualify them. So walk them through budget, pains, if they're right.
Do you do that on the first call, or do you schedule a meeting?
On the first call.
Okay.
If we get them on the phone, we're trying to keep them on the phone.
Call one, where you do some type of like qualification.
Yep.
Okay.
And then we look at their sales process. So right now we do have a bit of a different sales process depending on how they're going to purchase. So is it an American who's using insurance? If that's the case, right now we're looking at direct billing insurance companies, which means our BDAs hate this right now because we're sending them away to go to the doctor to get paperwork filled out, and a lot of them go dark because it's a lot of information that needs to be filled out. If it's Canadian insurance, great. They just need to call their insurance company, make sure they've got that reimbursement. Second call, hopefully we close them if they know what the reimbursement is. Third, if they're buying outright, try to close it on the first. If not, if they have other decision makers, we'll schedule a call back.
That's the second call.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you have like this increased complexity of like, do they have to go to the doctor? So for you, a lot of it is, how do we get more people to go to the doctor?
Exactly, yeah. So the first call, we'll close a few in the first call. It's not often because we do oftentimes need measurements sent in, other things to make sure, again, that they are qualified.
Okay.
But right now, with insurance, with the other decision makers, doctors, physiotherapists, our closing time is anywhere from, we're averaging right now about 30 days because we've just recently signed on with direct billing in the United States. It's a little bit longer, but we're hoping that that opens up our sales in the States.
Okay, great. All right, good. So we'll call this like an SMB sale. 2,500. All right, what about you guys? And then maybe you as well too. Like, I think it'd be good to just hear a few different.
So I would say our sales process it varies so vastly because we've got all of these several different products. But in terms of our core product, we really try to get those touch points when we're at an event or a conference because we are so remote.
Right.
And it's such a complex sale.
Yep.
So we often start with reaching out, calling out, when are you at your next, are you all attending at this
Yeah,
conference? And then getting those meetings while we're at the conference.
Okay, so you have the meeting one. What's the agenda? What usually happens in your first meeting? Like that first meeting, whether it's at a conference or via phone or whatever it ends up being.
Yeah, I would say if we're calling, the main objective is just to try to get that first meeting face to face. And then once we get that meeting, it's really just making sure that we ask the questions and understand, what are the things that they're dealing with right now? Are they, do they have a new product to market and all that stuff? And then, after that, it's doing a demo of our product.
Do you do a demo on the first call? Not usually?
Not usually.
All right.
No.
All right, so let's go to the next call. So meeting one is like some discovery, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Then what happens in meeting two? Are there more people usually that they get involved?
Yeah, usually it's, meeting one is just the discovery and call, and then meeting two is at a conference with either the marketing person or the sales manager.
Okay, so then there's a few new people that get brought in, and then you guys are you're doing a demo.
And then we're doing
in that second conversation,
Yeah.
usually. Okay, and then
Yeah.
what happens?
And then after that, it's, follow up with emails. Email
there a set
and a
next
phone
meeting?
call. Is there a set next meeting?
Mm-hmm. Yep, you're like, great, so here's what it is. Here's next steps. We're going to do this, this, this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it would be, thanks for meeting me, blah, 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 and then an email, and then a phone call, and then try to get to proposal stage, opportunity
So
stage.
meeting three is to try to walk them through a proposal. Or how often are you, how about this? How often are you emailing proposals after this versus walking them through?
I always believe in walking through a proposal.
Always walking
Yeah.
them through it. Love it.
Yeah.
Good. That's what you should be doing. Never, ever, ever email proposals. It's different if it's a transactional sale.
We've learned the hard way.
Exactly. You will learn the hard way, and then you will stop emailing proposals. It's great. So we'll call this proposal walkthrough. Great.
Yeah, even if the proposal is as simple as 2 lines,
Yeah.
I've always believed in, getting that webinar, walking them through the line by line, just
Yeah.
so that you have that extra touch
What do
point.
you think happens, guys, when you email a proposal? What page do you think they go to first? Dollars. And then they work their way back. Maybe. Yeah, exactly. Or they don't. Right? That's why you never, ever, ever, ever email a proposal. It's that lesson that I learned like once every 9 months. I'm like, God, we got this shit. Like, God, we got it. Email a proposal. And I'm like, no. Like, seriously, like, don't stop doing it. It's like, I mean, literally, it's because it's like you just don't want to, you're just like, I don't want to do this, But then you have to. Because again, what happens, to your point, man, expectations change. I'm going to talk a lot about this in an hour or so. The reason that you have to walk them through the proposal, I don't know how many calls I've been in my life, we start to walk through it, and they're like, actually, Jake, this is now this. This has done this. Okay, pull back. Now I'm not going to try to pitch you what I was pitching you. Okay, let's do a rediscovery. It happens all the time here. You got to do a requalification on every single call, right? I'm going to talk about how to do that, like in a really good format. But that's exactly right. Okay, and then what happens?
And just to touch on the proposal walkthrough, because
Yep.
it's important for us right now, because we're gearing up to selling data, for the first time. So it's, as we're discussing a proposal walkthrough, want to make sure that I communicate to our customer that this is flexible. Want to make sure we start the negotiation process, because it can't be just a black and white price point.
Yeah. So you let them know, like, hey, this isn't set. Yep, I'm going to talk a lot about that.
Exactly, yeah, because you just don't want to have that
Yeah.
that door shut
Yeah.
right away.
The word proposal is the problem. If every single one of you stop calling your first presentation a proposal, instead start calling it an initial outline. There's quick tip number 1. Stop calling it a proposal. In our mind, when we hear the word proposal, we think it's your best offer.
Okay.
So this is how we phrase it, how all of our clients. Great, so step one, we're gonna put together an initial outline. Let's talk through, we'll work through it, then we'll put together kind of the final proposal. You always want them to think that this is a collaboration,
Yeah,
and that's where initial outline will get you
I
there.
like that.
So when you call something a proposal, it's
Yeah.
stupid. You, like, on the sales side, you know that we'll negotiate, like, but sometimes when people hear the word proposal, they think, like, this is your best offer. So again, the very first time we show pricing, we always call it like a plan for partnership or initial outline. Then we put together a proposal, right? So that's like a big opportunity. It's like there's so many things that are in sales that are so subtle but can make a really big impact. So I'm glad that you called it out. Okay, so you do that. So then there's probably like a meeting 4, which is like a revision. Is that right? Like a revised proposal?
After some negotiations.
Yep. Any type of, did you guys do a proof of concept or trial of any type? Okay. What's up?
Demo.
What do you mean?
Like you mean a proof of concept of the product with them?
Yeah, like do you guys have like a 30-day, 90-day, like do people usually move into some type of proof of concept before they buy?
Yes, like there's a smaller scale of what we sell, so yeah.
How many deals start with a proof of concept?
Almost all of them.
All of them.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, and where does that fit in here?
So when, I don't know if you want to talk or me talk. Yeah, when we start to talk about pricing, what people really want to know is what this will cost long term.
Exactly.
So what we do then is get them into it. Long term, it could cost over $1 million. Let's just say it could cost much more than that. But we have a starting point at like 20K, where we sort of get them in, get them hooked on that contract. We would have a proof of concept ROI. So we would exchange financial information based on clinics they used our product at, and show them then, okay, here's the ROI you're getting. For every $1 you spend on us, you're getting $10 here. That's sort of the next stage of this pipeline.
After, yep.
Yeah. And then when typically if we get them to proof of concept, we either run more proof of concepts, like we haven't gotten them to fall completely off, or then we move to expansion.
Yep. Cool. So you either do a proof of concept, you get a deal, or do like a next proof of expansion.
Yeah.
Yep. And then you get the deal. And these usually
and on the data side, it's kind of new because we've now with our current product collected enough data where we can monetize.
Yep.
So the reason why we're being so flexible on pricing is there is a proof of concept there as well.
Sure.
Maybe just buy one report for us for 20K versus 5 reports for 250K, and then we can get them up to the higher price point. So there's a lot of selling never stops with once we have an account because it can grow up very, very big.
More and more.
It's just getting them in and being patient through the process.
All right. Do you want to walk through yours? Because it's kind of like an in-between. Yep. Okay.
Our most common one would be an internet connection.
What's an average sales price or average packet? What's like an average deal someone's doing with you?
$450 a month for a 36-month contract.
Okay, so that's 15,000 roughly. Am I
Roughly,
doing that
yep.
right? 15 to 20. Okay. All right. What's that process look like?
So we get leads coming in from a partner that we use to provide information, and they supply us companies that are within a kilometer of our current network.
Okay.
So they're already kind of pre-qualified in that sense. Then we go through and we
They
filter.
could be a customer, maybe.
Yeah, so it's kind of that high-level lead. We go through, we filter them based on some qualifications. We start out with a phone call.
Okay. So you have like a meeting 1.
Yeah, so that first phone call would be to kind of test the waters, see if they'd like to set up a meeting to discuss further.
Okay. What's the meeting 1? Like is it like a discovery? You're asking questions? What happens in that first meeting?
There's not a whole lot of information in that meeting. It's pretty short. We'd prefer to meet face-to-face to sit down and really go over their needs.
Because you're doing a local sale, right?
It is
Very
essentially
local. I got
local.
it. So
yeah.
meeting 1, the goal is to set meeting 2.
Yes. Meeting 2 is a needs
By
analysis.
the way, that's all of your goals. Just so you know what she just said, the whole goal of meeting 1 is to disqualify someone or set the next meeting. Your whole meeting 1 sales process has to have that in mind, right? Even the $2,500 sale, etc. The way that we think about running sales meetings is why it's so screwed up. This is it, what they're doing. It's the same. All of you, the whole goal of the first meeting is to get the next meeting with the right people. That's it. Whether it's with the $2,500, $15,000, or $400,000. It's the same for every single one of you. But again, we usually think our first meeting, the goal of the first meeting is like give information, teach them, or do whatever. It's like, no, I've architected every single step of that first meeting for you to go, yeah, we should set up another meeting. That's the whole goal of the first meeting, is to get past this person, or like that first initial stuff, to get the second meeting in person. Awesome call out. Love
Yay.
it. Okay, so then you meet in person, usually, meeting 2?
Yes, meeting 2 is typically in person. It can be done over the phone as well, and even sometimes by email.
Okay.
But that's a needs analysis.
Needs analysis, love it.
Figure out where their pain points are. And we have more of a consulting approach where we want to come in and fix their problems and help them. So then the touch point 3 is usually phone or email, and that would be us presenting our solution to fix their pain points.
Is that in person or is that over the phone?
Can be anything. Depends on the customer and what they prefer.
Okay. Okay.
And at that meeting 3, there would be the cost options presented as well.
Present solution and cost. Okay. Then what usually happens?
A little bit of negotiation,
Sure.
and then they'll either say, no, we can't, the budget's too high, or whatever it is, or they'll go forward and sign the contract.
Do people usually start with like a piece of what you do and then you guys grow the account, or how does your sale work? Or is it like I usually kind of like go all in and do the $450 a month for 3 years? Or
It's all based on the information that the customer gives us in the beginning.
Sure.
So sometimes they just say, all we need is internet. We don't want anything else. And then they'll come back 6 months later and go, wait, you know what else I need?
Right.
Is some phones, and I need to connect to this data center.
Okay.
So we need to do a better job of truly getting their needs up front so that we can give the right options to them from the onset.
How many initial deals, what percent close with just internet, deal 1?
I'd say probably 60 to 70%.
Okay, most? All right.
Yeah.
That's okay. All right, great. This is awesome. I mean, what you'll see here is like,
Do you want a SaaS company?
yeah, sure, I'll take one.
I guess we'll go through ours pretty quickly. I mean, it just follows the basic Salesforce one. So we have 3 pipelines. There's partner pipeline, sales pipeline, and renewal pipeline.
Okay, let's focus on direct. Let's focus on,
Sure.
Yep.
So, like, do you want to just go through like the pipeline, the stages, and
yeah,
the?
exactly, that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay. So that's we have prospecting, which is where we kind of have people who have been closed lost, and then we recycle them into the prospecting.
Okay.
Qualification, and that's for the prospecting people. Then we actually have where people come in at the beginning of it is the open.
Okay.
Open value proposition, where we're articulating what we do and doing a discovery and figuring out where we can help.
Right, so your first meeting is like a needs analysis.
Yeah, it's like, yeah.
Do you do a demo on the first meeting?
Not typically.
Okay.
And I'm not really in on those calls, to be honest with you, and I wouldn't say we've done enough of them to have a refined process,
Okay,
but we have something working right now. It leads up into like a needs analysis, like just like others have stated here. Like we basically make sure that we're aligned on the value proposition. We have a stage in there called value realization, and that's kind of a waiting period for people who like disappear, do the research, and that's when we cool off, and then we come back in heavy.
Okay. What's the second meeting usually?
I honestly couldn't tell you at this point. There hasn't been enough of them. Typically, there's like 3 to 4 meetings before we get a close.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So basically, it's like there's a needs analysis. So you guys do any type of like do they walk them through the wireframes or walk them through the product a little bit?
Well, I mean, you've met Laird and Darren before. They kind of do their lone wolves.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
All right. I'm just gonna assume.
So at this point, we're not really like meeting focused. We're more so like the stage of what it is that we're discussing, and that way people jump stages ahead, or like if they're moving faster, then they get through the funnel quicker.
This is going to be this sample, right? It's like there's a needs analysis, you present a solution, and close. or don't close. Like, it sounds like they're doing 2 or 3 meetings, right? Like, maybe there's a demo mixed in here, right? Or not. Okay. Cool. I'm just going to guess because I already know what it is. Proposal, close. So what I want to try to illustrate here is in like different flavors, it's all the same. Sales is this, it's all the same. You do a needs analysis. You then follow back up with them and you present some stuff to them. They then want to revise that stuff. You then meet with them again. You revise it further. Then you enter into a proof of concept or you close them down. If you enter into a proof of concept, you set up the process ahead of time to then close them. All of this is the exact same. Like, I think the biggest problem that people have with sales is they don't recognize the patterns, right? That you think they're all different. They're all exactly the same. Every single one of your sales is going to look the exact same. I promise you. You're going to go in. You're going to do this. You're going to do a needs analysis. You're going to put together version 1 of the proposal. They're going to go through it. They're going to say, cool, this is what we like, we don't like, let's do this. Then you're going to go to a proof of concept. Then you're going to do, the key thing that I'm hearing is maybe you guys aren't teeing up. I'm going to talk about how you tee up a better proof of concept. But that's it, dude. That's your world. And not only that, you should be selling proof of concepts, right? You guys should be, stop trying to lead with 25 reports for $250,000. Nobody's going to do it. Just lead with like, great, here's how we typically work. We'll do this report. Then after we show the value and we do these 3 things, then we'll go forward with this. Cool, great. As opposed to a lot of companies, they like back into the proof of concept. Own it. If your product requires a proof of concept, it is the process, right? And as soon as you accept that, your deals are going to move exponentially faster. But my illustration here, what I wanted to show you is just how similar. A SaaS company, her business that's transactional, again, it's a little bit shorter. They do a needs assessment. They talk about the ROI. They try to close them, or they loop in additional people. That's awesome. So thank you all for sharing. I appreciate it. So let me just show you. So what a good sales pipeline looks like is this, right? We're going to take a break here in a sec. Is good salespeople drive to decision, right? A common pipeline that we see is your yes pile is so big, your no pile is this big, and your maybe pile is huge, right? This is what murders your business in the early days, is your maybe pipeline. Good sales teams have a small maybe pipeline, a huge no, and a larger yes. Maybe is what kills your time and your business when you're a small team. The people that drag you on, etc. And it's because you're too terrified to qualify people out, right? That's really all it is. You're too scared to just say, and by the way, when you say the word disqualify, I'm not disqualifying you for forever. It's just like, not now, right? So all of you, I want to burn this like into your memories. Like, this is a good pipeline. Your maybe pile, those people that are in later stages of the process, needs to be small. And I need to disqualify people out really early, right? Again, and I think all of you who've been in sales long enough know this, that maybe is the worst. Having those people in flux, et cetera, is just the absolute worst, right? So we're going to dive into the process itself now. We're going to talk through the stages. Let's break until 2. This is probably, for a lot of you, a lot of the things that we had talked about in the very, very beginning, or even why the sales process is broke. This is going to be probably the most important part for a lot of you. So I want to make sure that, yeah, as we look at the sales process, entering new markets, I think this is where a lot of the questions are going to come up in relation to a lot of the things that we talked about at the very beginning of yesterday. So again, I think anybody who's been in sales knows that this is the truth. That again, maybes are what just killed your life, you know, and just like spending time with people who are tire kickers. Do you guys have that saying here? Kick tires, like, I think it's a used car thing. Maybe probably that's where it's come from. Okay, so in every deal, there's usually 3 groups that matter. When I showed you that Gartner stat, you guys talked a little bit about consensus. There's end users, decision makers, and people that will help you, right? Sometimes the people that will help you can be a part of this, but you have to understand, because so many decisions now are made via consensus, that these are just the people that are involved. It just is what it is, right? It used to be that, you know, the goal in sales, get to the decision maker, yeah, but if the decision maker, if the end users aren't bought in that this is something that's going to work for them, no decision maker is buying a $50,000 or $20,000 software, a $10,000 purchase without talking to somebody else, right? Even a $2,500 knee brace, right? They're probably talking to somebody else, right? So you have to try to engage all of these people in the process. The reason I asked all of you guys to go through this is that, like, sales is just the same. Like, and the sooner that you can just accept that it is and not look for the outliers, the sooner your life becomes a lot easier. So it's like, if there's a decision maker and like you can just see, like, I didn't write this like afterwards, like this is just what happens. You do a discovery meeting, then there's either an end user demo or a decision maker type of demo or additional discovery with new stakeholders. Then you do an outline review with people. Then there's some, again, variations. Then you do a plan for partnership. Then you either go into negotiation and close, or you go into like one of these other steps. Like sometimes there's additional meetings, right? Or sometimes it goes a little bit faster. It's a very similar flow. Discovery meeting, in-user demo, parallel path with additional discovery, outline review, plan for partnership, walkthrough. Like every deal is the same way, right? The key thing here, what a lot of companies try to skip, is the end user, right? The biggest issue that we see with a lot of sales processes is people don't do a very good job of getting the end user involved and appreciating the end user is going to be a part of your sales process, right? Or end user or influencer, whatever that looks like. This is what the process looks like if you get in through a non-decision maker, etc., right? So why do you need to have a documented sales process? Why is having a sales playbook important? It's really just about efficiency. Your reps can get up to speed. It can take them 2 months or it can take them 6 months, right? If you have a playbook, again, sales reps waste, this is from Salesforce, they waste over 50% of their time every day trying to access tools and content to do their job, right? I'm sourcing leads, I'm trying to find information, I'm trying to do this. Sales reps waste all their time doing dumb stuff that technology or a playbook could help them with, right? And so like that's why having a documented sales process is so important. So each deal will kind of follow one of these. And again, we kind of documented this before. There's usually a discovery phase that happens. Is there something here? Do I like you? Do you like me? Let's see what happens. Then you go into some initial evaluation. Let's get more people involved. Let's see if they like it. Then if that works out, then they get more people involved and you move forward, right? Or there's some type of proof of concept. Every deal is the exact same, right? Like I think like, that is one of the most important things that you can understand. Sales is not this like witchcraft. It's the exact same motion every time. And the sooner that you just accept it and you play to the motion that you can control, the better off that you'll be, right? So we're going to talk about these two phases and how to run these phases. Usually the discovery happens over the course of the first couple of meetings. All right, so what goes into a good discovery, right? And why people come to us all the time, they're like, Jake, we want to do a training on closing, or we want to do a training on objection overcoming and like all this other stuff. And the answer is always the same. It's the least sexy answer. Most of your issues happen because of the way you ran the very first meeting. Almost all of your sales issues, why deals aren't closing, etc., is from the very first 1 or 2 meetings. It's the first interactions were weird. You gave them power in the very beginning. You were like, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with me today. Thank you so much. Right? Immediately, whenever you thank someone for the meeting, you're immediately putting them above you. You're immediately giving them the power in the relationship. If another takeaway that all of you have is never thanking anyone for giving you time ever again, I've also done my job. Why are you thanking them? Why? Why are you thanking them? Because why? I didn't hear him. Well, don't. Stop it. Stop thanking people for their time. Why are you thanking them? Because they're bigger than you. They have a better title than you. It's because you're insecure. Stop thanking them. You bring more value to the equation than they do. Like the commission or the $50,000 or the $100,000 that your company's going to make versus the impact this has on their business is night and day. Right? You just said for every dollar that they save, you give them back 10. Why are you thanking them? Why are you saying, oh, thank you so much? Oh, would you do that on like a first date? Would you be like, oh, thank you so much for taking the time? Like, no. Then why are you doing it in this setting? Are they better than you? Like, you got to kill that. Like, if one of the most important things that you do is kill this, like, thank you so much. I'm so appreciative of it. Look, I've seen some people who can pull it off, and it's because they don't say it that way. Most of you say it that way, right? If you can say it with confidence, like, thank you. How about like the way that we do it is like, I'm excited for the conversation today. We're working with these companies, looking forward to walking you through what we've done here and to the conversation. You don't need to thank people. Stop it. So again, like, but you have to realize it's these subtle things that you do in the very beginning of a relationship, like with a prospect, that set up the future for how this relationship's going to go. If you put them in the driver's seat in the very beginning of forever, you're always going to be at their mercy, right? And so, again, rapport starts here, objections start here, their view of you starts here, in that very, very first interaction with you. And this can be a phone meeting or a face-to-face meeting, it doesn't really matter, right? So the discovery is the most important meeting. And that's why when people come to us and they say, Jake, we need to do, we've got this, it's like this woman just can't comprehend, like, they've got 30 account managers and they want us to do this closing training with them. And we're like, okay, cool, well, we're going to talk about the discovery process and we're going to do this. She's like, well, no, we need to talk about closing. I was like, we need to talk about the discovery process and we need to talk. And people just can't wrap their minds around. It all starts with the questions that you ask in the very first 2 meetings. All the objections that you're going to have throughout the sales process are from questions you either didn't ask or asked poorly in the first meeting. So the better you are at asking questions in a very specific order and getting the information, the more likely your deals are to either disqualify or close very, very early, which is what you want, right? So, oh my God, wouldn't it be great, man? Wouldn't it be great if like that just happened? Online, yeah, B2C is totally, B2C, it's the same, but I'm using other things. I've optimized the landing page for you, I've done this, etc. It's different ways of moving you through the process, right? Yeah, it's just the accordion, it's just condensed. It's like, I need to get you to decision path very quickly, so I need to remove barriers, show you this at this stage. It's like they're optimizing for you and like what's happening based on your experience. But yeah, dude, like trust me, like you will know the times, like whenever it's like they're hot and they're into it, like you'll know those times, right? But you don't prepare for that, right? You prepare, like I don't optimize the web page. I optimize the web page for your expected behavior, right? And then in real time, I'll adjust it. It's the same thing with the sales process. I'm going to optimize that this is what the process is going to be. And then if you want to accelerate it, cool, like let's accelerate it. You know, but I don't plan for that. Instead, I plan that it's going to be this. It's going to be the process we just laid out. It's going to be meeting 1, and meeting 2, and meeting 3. You know, so it's like you plan for the worst. You know, you plan for like this is what it's going to be, and you'll know it. It's that once a year, that twice a year sale that happens where they're like, cool, we're going to need a quote, we're going to need a proposal. Can you guys fly out? Can you meet with my team? But you don't ever plan for that. Like, but you'll know when it happens. I'll talk about when you'll usually notice it. The discovery is successful. So you can like officially mark this like box checked. If we know who the decision makers are, we know who's involved. We know what the business challenges are, right? Business challenges, right? And they commit to the next steps. Then we move forward with the discovery, right? It's also perfectly acceptable to disqualify people. I think this is what so many salespeople have such a tough time doing. And the best salespeople are fine with it. Because you're like, you brought it up before, like we've been burned or we've been fed up. As a salesperson, you just finally get sick of it. You just start to ask the more difficult questions. You're like, look, is there budget for this? Like you finally just hit that point, and then you're like, oh, that wasn't such a bad question after all. And then you ask it every time. You know, like a lot of sales is like people have to get fed up with it. So hopefully through this, like you'll just skip ahead. Like you don't have to just get fed up with it. Disqualification is perfectly important, right? This part is really important, is you get the prospect to voice their challenges, right? I talk to a lot of really senior salespeople, like men and women who have been carrying a bag for a long time, 45, 55, 60 plus. They're like, Jake, I already know what the pains are. I already know. I'm like, dude, I get it. I need you to say it. Because when you say it, it's more powerful, right? I need to get them to say, yes, this is a problem for me, as opposed to me just assuming. I can frame it to then get you to say it, but I need you to say it, right? It's just like a lot of things in life. Like if something's your idea versus their idea, if somebody feels like it was their idea that this was important versus you telling me that I'm screwed or I don't have a chance, it's always better. All right, so these are the 6 steps in the discovery process, okay? So in your this is usually like your first meeting, or like your first plus your second meeting. I'm okay with people that know how to effectively demo on a first call, as long as you know how to tailor it in real time, right? In this call, I'm going to talk through a demo on a first call, but I'll tell you where you could end a first call and then set up a demo instead. But these are kind of the steps, and I'm going to walk through each one of these. So I talked a little bit about like the opening, which is credibility and control. Yeah, don't thank people, right? When you overthank someone, it's a caveman, cavewoman instinct thing. As soon as I do it, somebody reaches for the power. As soon as I'm like, hey, Mark, thank you so much for having me in Cape Breton. I really appreciate it. Mark's immediately going to go, oh, no problem. I got it. And it's a power thing. And that's what you're doing. You gave that up on the very first second of the meeting. Like, why are you doing, like, stop doing it, right? Like, again, like, if you stop saying thank you before every meeting, I've done you a massive service that you don't even know, right? And it's okay. It's not being rude. Like, that's the whole thing. Like, why do we think it's being rude? It's not being rude to not overly thank someone. You know what I mean? If you have, like, a shtick and that's your thing, then fine. But, like, for the most part, don't do it, okay? So instead, what do you do, right? So instead, it's just about giving value. Hey, I'm excited for the conversation, Pierre. Based on what I've seen at your company and stage, I worked with these 2 other companies in the ocean tech field. I know probably one of the things you're thinking about is working with governments, et cetera. I'm excited to walk you through our work with them. But first, each organization that we work with has their own kind of place and time. I just want to spend maybe a quick 5 or 10 minutes, understand a high level on how you guys are thinking about sales and marketing and go-to-market today. Then we'll spend a bulk of the time talking about what we do at Scaled. And then if it seems like a fit, we'll talk about next steps. Does that work for you? I've said that like 10,000 times probably in my life. This is the same thing. We work with these people. We know that you probably have these challenges, but each company we work with is a little bit different. I want to spend 5 or 10 minutes understanding from a high level how you think about the problem, that blah, blah, blah. Then we'll spend a bulk of the time talking about what we do at Scaled. And if it seems like a fit, we can talk about next steps. Does that work for you? Every meeting starts the same way, right? Why? Now I have an agenda. Why people interrupt? How many of you have been interrupted in the middle of a sales call when they're like, can you just tell me about the product? Or like, hey, this is interesting, and like they interrupt you. And if you haven't, it will happen to you, right? And it's usually because you don't set an agenda. It's like you just start interrogating them, and like by question 3 or 4, they're like, where is this going? So I just set a very clear agenda. It was logical why I said it. I chose my words very carefully. We'll spend a bulk of the time so you know that I'm not going to ask you a million questions, right? And then at the very end, no pause. Does that work for you? Is that fair? They'll say yes, because it is. And if it seems like there's a fit, then we can talk about next steps. Does that work for you? No pause. There's a lot of times in sales where we either use pauses or don't use pauses to allow the lizard brain to kick in versus the frontal cortex. There are times I don't want you to think. I want your initial like common sense response. Does 1 + 1 = 2? Yes or no? Yes. Does 1 + 1 = 2? Yes. If I say yes or no and I try to push you to it, you're going to answer with your gut reaction, right? And in sales, there's times when I need your visceral reaction. I don't want you to think. I don't want you to like go into some like weird thought place, right? In the very beginning of the meeting is one of it, and there's like a couple other times that we'll use it. Does that work for you? Is that fair? Cold calls, we use like that technique a lot too. That's it. Like that's like the first 45 seconds. I'm okay with like small talk in the beginning of the meeting. Totally fine. Like talk about the weather. I don't care. Like small talk is cool. Small talk actually helps to humanize. A sales situation is weird. It's very like oddly adversarial. Like you're on this side, I'm this side, you're playing your cards, you know. So like small talk walking into the meeting is totally fine. In the States, we just do a lot less of it, right? In the States, it's like 45 seconds of it, you know, a minute. Like while you're walking to the meeting or you're waiting for other people to join the Zoom. But how you start the meeting sets the tone, right? And so I really, it's one of those stupid parts of the meeting that we give very little, we pay very little attention to that can have a massive impact on the rest of your meeting, right? So again, how you start it, I've got some updates, apparently. Some Microsoft updates. I have to do it right now. All right. Okay, so what are the questions that you all asked today? What are the questions that you asked? So you mentioned needs analysis was the word that you used. You talked about discovery. What are some of the questions that you all ask in every single meeting? Crickets. Okay, great.
We want to make sure we're talking to the right person.
How do you understand that?
Well, I don't know exactly what they asked, to be completely honest.
All right.
I've never sat in on a full.
All right.
High-level stuff now.
Okay. Now we got to dive in. What about your team? What do they ask, Marie?
For qualification questions?
Yes.
Like how is your knee affecting your mobility? what do you do for work? Does it impact you at work?
Yep. Trying to get them to say yes, it impacts my work. Yes, it's mobility. Yep. What are the questions that you all ask? What do you ask?
Timeline?
How do you ask it?
What's the timeline for the project?
Yep. When's the project going to go live?
When are you looking to put it in the water?
Yep.
Sometimes these projects take months to come together.
Yep. At what point do you ask that question?
Here, close to the end.
The end of the process? Good. Perfect. What about you guys? What are some questions you ask?
I'd say like we're asking for like a 3M, what are the biggest challenges that their reps are seeing?
Okay. Challenges that the reps are seeing. Yep. What are other questions that you guys ask on every call? On the first call? No. Okay. So you ask about challenges. Okay. What else?
Who else is involved?
Who else is involved, right? Maybe that's like part of the question she was mentioning. Who else is typically involved when you're looking to do something? Yeah.
We ask about the prices of what they've tried to help with the pain in their knee.
Yeah.
So
You're trying to
like
qualify
cortisone
budget.
shots, how much do those cost? Have you had another brace? How much does that cost? How much is knee replacement
Yeah.
surgery? So we kind of get them to add it up in their own head of like, how much have I spent on my knee issue that hasn't solved it?
Yep. Without saying, how much have you spent on your knee issue?
Right.
Exactly right. That goes back to the point that I made before. The questions that we ask many times are to help people think through it for themselves. They've never thought about this. And it's the same in B2B sales and really complex sales. They maybe have never thought about it. They've been doing business the same way. Again, we talked about it before. They've been doing things the exact same way and it's working. You know, like you calling up with a solution of like, I can help save whatever, like, yeah, that's cool, but like what I got's working. Like, it's like you, in your opinion, it's broke because you sell a product that fixes it. But guess what? I've been running it this way for 25 years and my business has f***ing exploded. So who are you to tell me that this isn't working? You know, and I think a lot of people, you guys see that you solve the pain so much, right? That you don't realize like you need them to, they've got to feel like it, like, okay, this is actually something I should move, that I should do. Okay. Okay, the very first set of questions have to be, who is this person, right? So if a couple of you mentioned this about understanding the decision maker, Bob mentioned it, who's involved. The very first set of questions are, hey, I work with a lot of VPs of operations. Each company, it means something kind of completely different. What are your 2 or 3 core areas of responsibility? As soon as they answer, I know exactly where I'm taking this meeting. If I don't know who I'm meeting with, if I don't know what their role is, what they do, how do I know if they're an influencer or a decision maker? Titles mean nothing. VP of operations is the worst title on the planet. It means that they could manage 40 people, or they could be like a frontline person. They could manage 3. If you go in and you make a ton of assumptions, oh, John's the decision maker. You don't know that. You want him to be the decision maker because it make your life easy. You have to assume on the first call you never have the right person, ever, ever. They just had a knee surgery, it's a little bit different. Like I'm pretty sure I've got the right person, right? But for all of you in B2B sales in particular, you never have the right person ever, right? And that has got to be your mindset on every single call. Instead, you want to make that person the person because that's the person who agreed to meet with you. John Smith agreed to meet with you. So now John Smith's going to be like your champion. He's not, right? You have to assume that there's going to be other people involved. I just showed you the stats. Average deal, 100 to 200 to 500 employees, 7 people are involved. John Smith is not the right person. He's a player in my act. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of you have to just realize from the jump, these people, it's not going to be just John Smith. There's going to have to be other people involved. And if you don't get other people involved, you're not going to close a deal. Or the deal's going to drag for like 85 years, right? So the very first question we ask, I work with lots of XYZs. I know in each company, it means that you can have different core areas of focus. What are your 2 or 3, it's really important that you phrase the question this way, core areas of responsibility? Why do I ask it that way, right? If I go to VP of operations at a decent sized company, hey, tell me about your role, Mark. My role, what do you mean? You sound like an idiot. If I ask the question that way, you sound like an idiot. You sound like you have no appreciation. Jake, what are your business challenges? My business, I've got 850, dude. If I ask the same question, what are the top 2 challenges you're trying to solve for by the end of 2018? Much easier question for them to answer. So we use this, it's called priming, right? Our brains use better when we give it structure. So it's my job to ask questions in a way that make it easy for you to answer. So if I say, what are your top 2 or 3 core areas of focus, as opposed to tell me about your responsibilities. Just think about yourself as a CEO. What are your responsibilities? What are your top 2 or 3 areas, like core areas of focus? Boom, he can go straight to those. So you need to make sure that you frame the questions in a way that makes it easy for me to answer that question, you know? So step 1, then it's Bob's question. Tell me about the team. Boom. As soon as I ask those first 2 questions, who are you and the things that you're responsible for, who else is in the org, I immediately know what my next steps are. Like, after that point, literally, all I want to do is hang up the phone. Like, I don't want to talk to them, like, ever. Like, my goal in the first meeting is to get off the phone as fast as humanly possible. Because as soon as I ask those first 2 questions, I already know where I need to go for the next meeting. And again, I told you guys this before, the whole goal of the first meeting is to set up the second meeting. As soon as you tell me who you are, how you fit in the process, and what your team looks like, you guys have sold this. You know what the play is going to be. IT needs to get involved here. Jenny Smith from whatever is going to, I know what needs to happen. Right? So then again, what you usually say then after the roll and fit is I'm going to say, great, so if this is something that might be a fit, maybe we'll loop in Jenny Smith, et cetera, down the road if that works for you. Right? That's it. Bob's question. Who else is typically involved? Or yeah, et cetera. Great. So if there seems like a fit, maybe we will loop her in down the road if there's a fit. As opposed to like, I'd love to loop in Jenny Smith down the road. And then they're like, no, send me some information. I'll go talk to Jenny. We're doing this at the very beginning of the meeting. The reason we do it at the beginning of the meeting, we talk about maybe looping in other people. Here's what happens to sales resistance throughout the meeting. Up and to the right. Oh, in the beginning, it's just 2 dudes talking. Hey, what's up? You know, we're chit-chatting. At the end, it's like, he's going to close me. You know, just think about like any buying experience you have. The first, it's like, in the beginning, you're like, oh, this is casual. Then toward the end, you're like, oh, man, he's going to like try to close me. And you get like, they know that's happening too. So that's why when you ask at the end of the meeting and you say, I'd love to loop in Jenny Smith and blah, 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 that's why they always say the exact same thing. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, can you send me some details on this? And then I'll circulate it internally, and we're going to have a couple of conversations, and then we're going to get back to you, Mark. We'll come back. Yeah, follow up with me next week. Guys, like if that response doesn't make you like viscerally sick to your stomach, like you're in the wrong profession. Like, and when I hear that response, I'm like, I screwed up. When I hear, this is really cool, this is interesting, can you send me some information? I'm going to circulate it internally. It is the worst possible outcome of a meeting. That is how you go into maybe hell. I'm dead serious, and a lot of you are laughing because you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is not a good response. That does not mean I'm interested. I am not interested if I say, send me some information. That is the most polite way that Americans have to get you off the phone, right? Canadians probably do it too, right? So that's why I asked some of these questions in the beginning. Then I go into business challenges, right? What are your top 2 or 3 core areas of like core challenges, the top goals for the department, et cetera, right? And then we get into what they're doing next, right? So I'm going to talk about that here in a second. So again, start the meeting off with the agenda. Who is this person? What is their department? What are their business challenges? Where people usually get this twisted and they mess up is they don't say, what are your business challenges? That's not how they ask the question. What's the solution? Like, what does your solution solve for? Like, what's like the main pain point? One of you 4. Like, what's the main pain point? It's not a trick question. I know you are. Go ahead, product. Wonderful, great. All right, awesome. So I wouldn't ask, so a very typical question, instead of like, what are your business challenges? My guess is the way that you might ask it today, hey, how are you doing fillings today? As soon as you take it there, as soon as you say, or Protocase, right? They build custom enclosures. As soon as you say, great, how are you handling your custom enclosures today? You just made that conversation as tactical as it possibly could be. Hey, how are you dealing with fillings? I guarantee that's probably like one of the second or third questions you ask. As soon as you do that, I can't then talk to you about how I'm going to help you to open up your next 2 or 3 shops, right? So we ask business level, high level, hey, for your department, what are the top 2 or 3 business goals? Well, this year we're trying to open up a new location and blah, blah, blah. We're doing this. We're adding 2 new doctors to the practice. Cool. I want to be the company that's going to help you to do that, not the company that's going to help you do fillings more appropriately and save a few bucks. If you can tie what you do to business initiatives, right? How you're going to be able to do that. How, again, I don't sell custom enclosures. I sell the fact that you guys are now going to be more competitive in the market and gain 3% market share next year. That's the problem I want to solve, not that I do custom enclosures better. That's how you get caught up with the competition, is whenever you start to take the conversation tactical real quick. So again, all of you need to focus on the very first questions you ask after roll and fit are business challenges. What are your top 2 or 3 business challenges? For you, again, it might be around like, hey, like tell me about like your activity goals. Like what are your like again, like I don't know, like that might be weird, but you know, something, I would ask them higher level lifestyle choice questions before I get into how are you doing your knee, like how are you dealing with your knee. As soon as you do it, you're making it a tactical conversation. So for all of you, I want you to think about what are the business challenges that you guys can help to solve for that are higher level, not just I can offer you a better price or I'm a commodity, right? And that's one of the most important things that you guys can take out of this too, is that you guys need to try to solve for business challenges, not tactical, we are better at filling these things, right? So again, as we think about exiting the discovery process, look, in a discovery process in a SMB sale, it can be 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be super, super long, or 10 minutes. In an enterprise sale, like it's going to be like 30. Right? It just is. Right? There's just a lot more complexities that I need to try to understand. So again, the goal of this today is, who is this person? What are their current plans? Where are they trying to go? And then I go into, great, how are you doing your fillings today? That's the last set of questions that I ask. Right? And then what are the gaps? If there are no gaps, and you guys have been on this call, it's nope, everything is good. No, we've got a great custom person. We actually do all our custom work in-house. Nope, there's no problems. No, yeah, we don't have a big need coming up next year, like anything like that. Exit the conversation. Disqualification after the discovery is totally acceptable. Like if there is no voiced gap, right, then all you have to do is recap it back to him. Okay, John, so it sounds like you guys do all your custom enclosures. You're only doing 3 or 4 a year. They're not really super complex, right? So look, man, it sounds like you guys are set. I've said that thousands of times. It sounds like you're set. If you start to see this or this, which I know they're going to see, like, oh, that the custom enclosures start to go long, that they're taking, you know, maybe a month or however long extra, you start to see like these issues with fillings or whatever, then we can pick back the conversation in a few months, right? Let me give you a quick high level on what we do. You give them a little spiel. Next. Disqual. If there's no voiced gaps, you're not going to throw a bunch of spaghetti against the wall and just think that they're going to be like, oh, wow, now this is great. Instead, I'm going to plant little seeds, and I know these things are going to go off. Right? Like, okay, yeah, if around the holiday season you're starting to think about measuring your ad effectiveness, maybe a little bit more, you're not getting what you need from your mobile data, maybe we'll pick back up the conversation then. And then what happens? I'm going to pepper her like, mobile data, and I know she's going to be in a board meeting or something like that later. She has no mobile data. She's like, oh, yeah, those guys. It's perfectly acceptable to eject yourself after the discovery. It's why she asked the question of like, great, so how much have you spent here? How much have you spent? And if they're like, $25, I went to CVS, whatever, she hears us, she's like, great, sounds like you're amazing. They're not going to like hard pitch the $2,500 bionic knee now. You know what I'm saying? So it's okay to disqualify people. Stop hanging on. You know, I'm not disqualifying them for forever. Right? And I think that's what a lot of people, if I don't hear a pain, if there's no issue, the other place that people mess up in the discovery process is you don't go 2 layers deep. Great, hey Jake, one of my business challenges is we're trying to better measure the effectiveness of our ad spend, right? The follow-up question to every business challenge question is why? Great, why? Why is that important now? Well, because we just fired our agency and we're trying to figure out how to bring that in-house. Okay, great, well why, what made you guys fire the agency? Well, the agency did this and this. Okay, well why do you think that happened? Every question that you ask, you guys have to go at least 2 levels deeper. The reason that, again, I talk about why the discovery process is so critical is you guys hear something like, yeah, no, we don't have a solution for underwater acoustics. And in your mind, you heard a pain point. That's not a pain point, that's a fact. Yeah, no, we don't have an underwater acoustic solution. You're like, oh, yeah, there's a deal here. Like, there's not, dude. Like, if I say, okay, well, why? Why haven't you done that? Well, we only do this stuff once a year, blah, blah, blah. Cool, disqual. You know, like, well, honestly, we haven't had this. We've tried a whole bunch of solutions. Okay, how important is this? How important is underwater acoustics to this? Well, you know, actually it's not, you know, it's like not mission critical for what we do. Cool, next. You guys have to ask the next layers of questions. The reason that you get to deals and you waste all your time generating proposals, et cetera, is you don't ask why. Why is this a priority this year? Why are you doing this? Why is this happening now? Like, just use why to dig in and get to that next layer. Like, I can't tell you how important it is. And again, you just get burned enough to where, like, I just never get excited. Like, any answer that somebody has, I just never get excited. You know, if they're like, yeah, well, we don't have an underwater acoustic solution. Like, I never am like, oh, here's a deal. It's like the polar opposite. I'm like, I'm actively disqualifying everybody. You have to prove to me that you have like a real issue, that there's a real problem, a real pain that I can solve for. I just know from experience, like, it's just not going to happen. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of people, a lot of you, especially a lot of you are really early on, you guys all have happy ears. So I don't know if that's a saying you guys use, or rose-colored glasses. You guys hear yes all the time, like, oh, well, he's interested. Like, dude, they're not interested. And it's because you're not asking the tough questions, right? You're not asking. So eventually you're just going to get sick of it. You'll just get fed up, and you'll just start asking tougher questions in the discovery. You'll have enough people not get back to you, enough people like string you along, and you'll just get sick of it, right? And then finally, like, something will snap, and the guy will say something that you heard from like the last 85 prospects, and you go, yeah, Mark, I hear this sometimes. Like, why isn't this a problem? And then the guy will answer it, and you're like, oh, wow, that wasn't so hard, right? Like, just ask why. It's one of the most important things. Like, it's a very kind of classic sales thing, but you need to get to the root of the problem to understand, is it really a problem or is it a fact? I need to hire 20 developers. That's not a problem. It's a fact, right? I need to hire 20 developers, but I'm located in Meat Cove, okay? All right, well, why is that a problem? Well, nobody knows who we are and we're located in Meat Cove. All right, well, that's a problem. Like, that's a pain, right? I need to answer like 85 steps down, right? But it could not be a pain. Oh, but I just approved 20. If I didn't ask why, if I didn't like, oh, or like, why is that an issue? If I didn't ask that, the answer could have been, oh, no, I've got 20 guys that I just got, I don't know, we have J1 visas. No, I just got 20 guys that I just got visas for who are moving out here. It's not really a problem. Like, I'm good, right? Like, you don't ask those next level questions and you hear what you want to hear and you move on, right? So in the discovery process, sit with it. Don't be so nervous or so anxious to get on to demo and talk about what you do. Really be curious. I just get curious about all of your businesses. Like, they're all just like weird and interesting to me. Like, you know, like there's a lot of ocean tech and stuff. I'm just like, you guys fill cavity. Like, I just am naturally really curious about people's business. I think it's what made me an effective salesperson. But all of your salespeople have to be the same way. You gotta be naturally curious about what's happening and not scared to ask questions, right? The discovery process is really important. Okay, so this is gonna be the concept that's gonna be kind of like, most of you are probably already doing this. I'm gonna try to like break it down real quick. So after the discovery, thanks, John, I really appreciate it. Now you can say kind of like, I appreciate you like walking me through it. Then we go to the worldview, okay? So this is where you talk about, this is before you go into the demo. It's where you talk about kind of what you do. If you guys read Challenger Sale, which all of you will now, they talk about this a little bit. And the basic construct is this. Great, John. So thanks for walking me through again, like how you guys are handling XYZ today. Let me tell you a little bit about Blue Light and how we think about the world and what we're seeing in dentistry today. So what we're seeing more and more is that dentists, you know, people are less discerning about the dentist that they choose to go to. Online review, blah, blah, blah. There are these common things that are happening. How have you seen that? Oh, yes, Jake, we've seen that, right? Then one mega trend. But what a lot of dentists aren't thinking about is, I don't know, like direct mail or something like that, or like the inventive technology, because I know like Invisalign is dead. Now that Just Smile came out, Invisalign's dead, right? Why would you ever go in to do Invisalign to your doctor when I can just have them shipped to my house? Like, that business is gonna die. You know, like my point is, like, then what we try to do is I've got to shake you out of your current worldview. I've got to try to make what I'm doing not interesting, but important, right? So let's talk about like monitoring like ocean frequency. This is gonna be hard, okay? But what I might say is something like, and by the year 2020, and again, I use a lot of third-party stats, Harvard Business Review, Forrester, Gartner. It's not, look, this is not me and my company saying that this is important. This is Dental Associates Monthly, or whatever it is. By in 2019, 2020, 2021, right, there's gonna be over 5,000% more devices in the ocean that are gonna need to be picked up. There's gonna be this, like more and more people are gonna be, again, it's a tough one, right? But all of you have a trend like this. right? There's a trend that you solve for. So again, maybe again, it's like about reconstructive surgery, right? It's like, and do you know this? Here's what's happening with knee problems. Here's what's happening to the amount of people that have to have a second surgery. Look, this is what the New England Journal of Medicine said. This is not what I said, right? Knee surgeries are going like this. Second knee surgeries are going like this, right? And in order to solve, it's like you need to be able to do this. So what are the key capabilities that solve this trend that's going to happen over 2019, 2020, 2021? You need to be able to do this, 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 and this. That's what we do at Scaled. That's what we do at Spring Loaded. We prevent you from having a second knee surgery, right? As opposed to like, we're an improvement on your current knee brace. You know what I mean? And dude, you can't, the key is like, look, this is not me saying that this is happening. This is a New England Journal of Medicine. Believe what you want. You know, so we use a lot of third-party stats. So this is how you should talk about your company like at a cocktail party. If I say, hey, what do you guys do? Oh, well, in the industry that we work in, all these things are happening. Most CEOs, if you guys listen to CEOs, they kind of talk like this. A lot of CEOs already kind of talk in terms of like problems, where the industry's going. We started this. Sounds a lot like your VC pitch sometimes too. But sales, you need, and this goes back to like your point, it was like, how do I get people up to speed on the industry? You just spoon feed them this stuff. What are the 3 most common problems that people face in car dealerships, in quick serve restaurants? Great, so we know a lot of quick serve owners, you're worried about turn times, you're worried about downtime of like the POS, and you're worried about this, right? Do you know that like typically in a quick serve restaurant, if the POS is down, blah, 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 if the consumer doesn't have internet access or Wi-Fi access today, here's what the satisfaction scores have done year over year. It used to be a would like to have. Now, as a QSR restaurant, here's what the data is saying you have to do. So in order to do that, you need to have secure and more reliable blah, blah, blah for the POS. You need to do this, you need to do this. That's what we do at our telecommunications company. I improve your customer satisfaction, and I ensure uptime to where you gain an extra 4% every year. Same, it's just a way more interesting way to describe your business. Because if they don't agree that this is an issue, if they don't think that having a next surgery, if I don't really care about my rehabilitation, I'm not going to invest $2,500 for a knee brace. There's no chance. If they don't agree with this, I'm not going to do business with Blue Light. There's no chance. I don't see the value. I don't believe this trend. If I don't believe that this trend is real, guess what? This is the trend that you solve for, right? And this is it. This is like, by the way, it's like a minute, 2 minutes. This is all this is, right? We usually say, hey, great, how have you seen this? Then we ask this question. We say, great, how have you thought about this? And then if you don't hear discomfort in their voice, it's not a tough enough question. It's not a good enough thing. It's soft. Like you need them to go, you need to hear, well, yeah, it's something we're definitely thinking about. You need something. I need to disrupt the way that they're currently thinking about like that space, right? It's not about filling cavities. It's about where the future of dentistry is going. And in order to do that, there are these 3 things. You're going to need to have whatever for x-rays, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and that's what Dentist Advocate Weekly said. That's what we do at Blue Light. Do you guys see the difference as opposed to like, this is the features that my product has? This is not that difficult to do. Just get a lot of third-party stats, right? But I think it's a concept that a lot of people struggle with because it's so much easier to talk about the features of my product. And this is whenever your thing, whenever yesterday was like, how do I add business value? How do I, instead of talking about tech, learn to talk about problems and trends? Here's what's happening. Here's what we're seeing in the market, et cetera. And in order to stay competitive, you need to be doing these things, right? These are the people, again, I have to raise the importance of what we do from a priority 32 to a priority 10. You're never going to be number 1, very rarely. So this is worldview. And then that's before you go into the demo. I linked to an example from one of our clients that you guys can look at as well, too. It's a really loose one. And then if you're going to do a demo on the first call, we refer to it as matching. So again, for like the guys at Securacy in particular, like this is important because I just don't walk you through it the exact same way. I shouldn't be able to hit record and then hit play on every single demo. Like you should be switching it up based on the pains that I told you about in the discovery. But when I listen to a lot of demos, like it sounds like one size fits all. You explain ProtoCase the same way. You explain the knee brace. Like the knee brace probably solves like 4 problems. If you really care about athletics or getting back up to speed, it helps you to do that, depending on what the pain is. So whatever the pain is, that's what I talk about my product. A lot of demos that I hear when people talk about what they do, They're focused so much on it's the exact same for everybody. It's just swapping in and out. So before everything that you say about your product, if you can't say, great, so from early in our conversation we talked about that, here's how we do that. Earlier we talked about this is how we help you do that. So I'm okay with you having like a similar way you walk people through it, but what you spend a bulk of the time talking about should be the pains that they said that they had, right? But instead, I hear a lot of people, their demo talks about everything equally. The other thing for a lot of you is you need to have a level 1 demo for VPs and decision makers. How do you show me your product in 5 minutes? Business value, what it does, the value that it drives, and then you need to have your end user demo that might be 30 minutes. You know? And if they're the same people, then obviously it's somewhere kind of like in between. Right? And I think this is where a lot of people struggle. If I am a head of a big dentist group, for example, do you think I give a shit about like admin data or privileges? You think I'm ever going to log into this system and you're showing me like settings? Why are you showing me settings? Why are you showing me any of this stuff? Right? Like in security, like, dude, I'm the head of IT. I don't care about admin settings. Like the end users are going to care about that. Like I care about business impact. So you need to have a 5-minute, again, we call it a level 1 and a level 2. Level 1 demo is at 5 to 10 minute. Level 2 is like the longer one. The 5-minute is here's the business value. This is how it does this. This is how it does this, etc. So again, think about demoing. You get a demo different to different people. Okay. All right. So this is going to be probably, I think, one of the more easy to execute pieces of this process, right, for all of you, okay? So this is how you end the meeting. So I've just got the pain, talked about how we're different, raised the importance of what we do, shown you how we solve specific problems. Now we've got to get the second meeting, right? And for a lot of people, they don't have that much difficulty getting the second meeting. It's like the third and the fourth meeting. Like a lot of times they can get people to do it. But let me just talk to you about like this cadence of activities here. All right. So how the meeting has to end, and every meeting is going to end the exact same way, hopefully for you. Once you finish talking, there's usually an awkward silence, right? So let's take the guys from security or from any type of software. Usually what happens is you get to the end of like your walkthrough or your talk, and I hope to God what you never do is go, great, what are next steps? Or like, please God, don't ever do that. Don't ask them what next steps are. How do I know? You just showed this to me. You should be telling me what the next steps are. You know how to buy this thing. You have to realize with most of your products, they're like new to market or something. I don't know how to buy it. Companies do not know how to collaborate. Right? I'm going to show you a bunch of stats here in a second about how terrible companies are at collaborating. But yet too often we're like, we wait for them to tell us how to buy, or or we expect them to figure it out. They're never going to figure it out. So what we do is we talk about the next steps, and the next steps. So how you end every first meeting is identical. As soon as you end your demo, or as soon as you end that very end of it, you don't wait for that pause. Because if you wait for the pause, that's when they jump in and go, yeah, this is really cool. You have to immediately go into, great. So Ross, let me tell you about typical next steps. So typically what we'll do next, it sounds like Mindy, she's going to be the person who's going to be in the system, like using it day to day. So typically what we'll do, and listen to the words, typically, normally, typically, normally, typically, normally. The reason we use these words, we as people, if it's normal or typical, we're like, oh, this is normal. Like, we don't know. And by the way, this is what big companies do already. They know what their process is, so they say, this is next, we do this, we do this, we do this. So typically, then we'll do a demo for Mindy, make sure it's something that she can see utility in, that she could potentially use. If that looks good, then we'll set up a conversation maybe in like a week and a half, talk through some of the specifics of how we normally pilot, and then we can talk about next steps from there. Does that work for you? Every single time. Great, so typical next steps are we'll set up a high level. So it sounds like we'll need to loop in IT, marketing, et cetera, give them like a quick high level. Assuming we have some details there, then usually we'll have a separate set of meetings for these individual groups. If everything looks good, then we'll typically talk about what a proof of concept looks like, and we'll go from there. Does that work for you? No pause. Every single time. It's the same. It's Groundhog Day, right? If it's a product that has an end user, I know the next step, I've got to go demo the end user. So why don't I just tell you? You know what I mean? I think a lot of people are afraid. They feel like that's like pushy. It's not pushy. Like, you're helping me, right? It's logically, it makes sense that, yes, that should happen, only if there's value along the way, right? So again, if you're meeting with a decision maker, the next step is always great. So it sounds like Ross is the person who might be in this day-to-day. So we'll do a quick high level for him, see if it's something that he finds value in or something that might be able to help. Then, assuming there's a fit, you and I can catch up maybe a week and a half from now and talk through next steps. Does that work for you? So anyway, there's different versions of this for each one. But even, each product will have its own version of this. Every meeting, you're putting them in your path. Because guess what? The people that buy, this is just what happens. You guys just walked me through your process, right? It's the same, right? You guys need to put them in the motion, right? So then the next meeting is where you usually have more people. But again, at the end of every meeting, you have to take control of the next steps. Again, it's just, you just have to get so fed up where you're tired of people not getting back to you. You're tired of people lying to you, Mark, that they're gonna call you back and they never call you back. You just have to get fed up, or just start doing it. It's not that difficult. Great, so let's talk about next steps. And again, you have to use words like typically, normally, etc. We as people just were like, oh, this is normal, as opposed to this is weird. Okay. So big meetings suck. How many of you, and we already talked to you guys, how many of you have to have meetings where there's sometimes more than one person or more than one group? A few of you? Okay. So I'm going to try to go through this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because a lot of these groups don't necessarily have that. The whole goal of whenever you have multiple groups with competing interests, your whole goal is to divide and conquer. What I mean by that is, I kind of gave you guys some analogies before, is more meetings can actually accelerate your deal. This is super counterintuitive to 90% of people. They want, a lot of us in sales, we want to have as little meetings as possible, etc. More meetings will accelerate your deal, especially if a somewhat complex sale. And the reason is, if more meetings, I can control the message to these individual groups versus them forming their own opinions. And I think a lot of people struggle with this because, I don't know, they think more meetings is going to slow it down. It won't slow it down, it's going to speed it up, right? So the agenda to the second meeting is what breaks you. So again, I talked to you about this at the very beginning. It's the first two meetings that set your whole path of if you're going to close this deal. The agenda for the second meeting with large groups is the exact same every time. Thank you, John. Looking forward to the conversation today. So John and I had a really good conversation 2 weeks ago. The goal for today is to talk through a few initial ideas of how we typically partner in these scenarios. Then IT, we're going to set up a separate meeting for next week to talk through some of the more technical details. Operations, we're going to talk about how we normally pilot and set up some time for that next week. And then again, our goal at the outcome for this should be that we then have an idea of is there a potential business reason that we can work together? Does that work for everyone? Great. And then when IT chimes in, that's a great question, Rick. That's exactly what we're going to talk about next week. Operations chimes in. It's an awesome question, Susan. It's exactly what we're going to talk about next week. That's the big problem. The problem is you let IT infect those big meetings with people, or you let other groups infect those big meetings, right? And for any of you who have to run these types of enterprise sales cycles, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? So for a lot of you, again, how you set the agenda for that second meeting is the reason you get smoked in the second meeting, right? So again, they bring in their CEO, they bring in someone else. You have to tell them why they're there. Even better is send out the agenda ahead of time, right? Or try to get some of those meetings ahead of time, right? So in complex deals, again, buyers said speed was 2 times more important than price. People want to move fast. Deals that close usually move faster. Deals that drag on don't. Buyers also want to move fast. They don't want some long, drawn-out process. You think they want to be having 95 conversations with you? I mean, you're a nice guy, but I don't want to keep dragging this on. Buyers want to move quickly too. Believe it or not, again, this is McKinsey, this isn't me, so don't shoot the messenger. You can sit here and tell me people don't have money, but if McKinsey's telling me that speed is important, just is what it is. The other place is people don't know how to collaborate. You have to collaborate for them. Give up all hope. Give up all hope that IT and your people are going to ever talk together. Forget it. It's your job to help them collaborate. In sales, that's really 99% of my job is making sure Kevin understands the message, and then Pierre, and then Mark. Okay, Mark, this is how we're going to help you. Pierre, this is how I'm going to help you. And each one of you, it's slightly different. But I need that one-on-one interaction. So then I'm setting up those next meetings to talk IT through the technical questions that they had, operations through whatever questions they had, right? Because they all care about very, very different things. In users, I want to talk about training, support, Here's how we work together. If I'm a decision maker and you're spending a lot of your time in this bigger meeting talking about, here's a demo of the product, I'm tuning out, man. I'm on my phone. Like, that's why decision makers are on their phone during your meetings, is because you're showing me a demo. Like, dude, go show someone else a demo. Like, how is this going to drive revenue? How is this going to save us money? Like, again, end users care about that. VPs, they care about organizational challenges. Industry, again, like top-level exec, the competition. Vetting execs, that's IT, that's procurement, they care about compliance and price. Each one of these people cares about completely different things, right? And so if you're trying to have one big meeting and I'm trying to talk to all of you equally, it's a recipe for failure. So again, this is really more important for a lot of you when you have these more complex deals. I want you to think about your goal is to divide and conquer, right? Again, you get a big meeting with a big home builder. They bring in construction. They bring in operations. They bring in logistics. Great, guys. Hey, the goal is we're going to talk to you about how we can help, you know, from a high level. Then operations, we're going to talk about XYZ. Logistics, we're going to talk about shipping. And you know, day-to-day operations, we're going to talk about installation next week, right? And then I can control my message to make installation happy. I can make operations happy. And then when we all get back together, everyone's happy. Because guess what? Those groups aren't talking when you're not around, right? So again, the goal of the big meeting, divide and conquer. Absolutely. It's exactly what you should be doing. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, you should definitely be bringing, again, I'm going to bring product to my engineering meeting probably. Right? I'm not going to, but maybe not my operations meeting. I don't know, maybe, unless I want to talk product roadmap. Well, let me tell you what I see a lot of problems too is, as the quarterback of the deal, it's your job to tell people their roles in the meeting. I hear a lot of people, they become victim, oh, my person talks too technical. Did you sit them down and tell them their role? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. And so but he might be too technical, right? You got to be smart about that. But my point is, a lot of the times, like, if you are the salesperson, you are the quarterback, or you're doing this, you need to tell people their roles going in. CEO, like, again, like a Glassdoor, I would bring out Robert. I'd be like, Robert, your job is to talk about the vision and this, and then I'm going to pick you up and I'm going to put you back in your glass box and do not talk. Robert's like, cool. Like, all right, great. He doesn't want to talk. I'm like, in case of like executive break glass, I bring Robert out. Robert does his dance. I pick Robert back up. I put him back in his box and we roll. You know, if I'm bringing in a technical or sales engineer, I want you to hit these 3 things. This is what I want you to avoid. You got to prep them. So that's just one thing to think about. All right, so these are the main reasons why your deals stall out. So I'm going to talk about the later stages. So the discovery process, is that helpful, like a framework to think about how to run those meetings, right? Take control in the beginning, roll and fit, business challenges, worldview, demo, next steps. That's it. Every meeting, it's identical, right? Big meeting, divide and conquer, okay? Why your deals stall, okay? What you're doing is viewed as interesting, not important. A lot of you guys, anytime, I want you guys to start to learn how to cringe when someone says, wow, this is interesting. I want you to have like a visceral, terrible reaction to that. Wow, this is really interesting. That is not a buying signal. It isn't. This is interesting, and I have budget, and it's a priority, and it's whatever. That's cool. Like, that gets me excited. This is interesting is like, he's not seeing the value. She's not getting it. Like, when I hear something's interesting, I'm like, great. Like, it's not a buying signal. You know, if you can start to learn that this is interesting isn't a buying signal, like, that's one of the most important things that you can learn, right? This is important. This is mission critical to hitting our 2018 goals. That's what I want to hear. You know what I mean? Like, that's when I'm like, oh, okay, this is a home run. Now we can accelerate and move fast, etc. We don't have one-to-one buy-in. We talked about this. I'm going to talk about not managing various departmental priorities. That goes back to what I said before about the divide and conquer. You do a really bad job of talking to each group individually, as opposed to like this like really vanilla message for the organization. But this one's really important. Many times the reason that you lose deals is you oversimplify how easy it is to get started, or you don't make them feel comfortable with the next steps, right? And so what I mean by that is I hear a lot of people, it's like, yeah, it's so easy to get started. It's just 2 lines of JavaScript and the header and the footer. Or like, it's so easy to get started, or it's so easy to blah, blah, blah. It's so easy for us to do it, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's not easy, dude. I've been doing things the exact same way. I've got to retrain the staff. I got to do this. Like, again, even putting in new Wi-Fi, it's not easy. Do I got to change my modems? Do I have to do this? What about this? Who do I call for security? What happens when this happens? Like, these decisions, you oversimplify it way in your head because you're so deep in your own product. In your mind, like, oh, it's easy. I just plug it into their thing and it works, and here's the data. It's like, okay, well, now I've got to learn how to like make this a part of my business. So what happens is a lot of times you oversimplify it. When you say things like it's really easy to get started, it shows that you don't really appreciate the situation that I'm in. You think that you're trying to make it simple, but usually you're oversimplifying it, right? You also don't want to overcomplicate it. I'll talk a little bit about that, okay? But that really is it. In sales, I need to understand priorities. I need to then make sure that they think what I'm doing is important, and I need to remove barriers for next steps. That's kind of like really all my job is. It's to like make you feel comfortable about like, look, I'm going to project manage this. We're going to do all the work for you, even though there's going to be homework for you to do. But I'm going to PM this. Really what they want to hear from you on the sales side is that you're going to project manage this with our team. That this isn't going to be another project that I as a decision maker have to mess with. That's really all they want to hear, you know? Okay. I told you this. Please don't ask what are next steps. You guys have all sold your products. If you guys have to know what next steps are. They've never bought what 90% of you in this room do. They've never bought it before. How could I possibly then know what next steps are? You have to feel comfortable guiding people toward next steps, right? Don't do it. Don't present the proposal early. Don't only focus on the DM. Man, this is a massive mistake that people make in enterprise sales. They're like, well, I'm talking to Jonathan Smith. He's the blah, blah, blah. He's the head of operations for all of this. And you think that you're in the deal. And then what happens in that room that you're not in a week later when John Smith goes to his team and goes, what do you think, Marie? And Marie's like, nah, that's okay. Do you think they move forward? Nope. I see it a lot. People they overemphasize the time with the decision maker versus making sure, man, I got to make sure you're sold as shit, Kevin's sold as shit, and you're sold as shit. Like I'm not being sloppy. I can't rely on Pierre to sell both of you. Like that's my job. It's my job to make sure that Kevin feels comfortable and Mark feels comfortable. You know, and that's what a lot of people don't understand. And we talked about this, don't email proposals. I'm glad to hear that you don't do that, which is great. So I just want to talk about how to structure your proposal. There's a difference between a business case-based proposal and a product-driven proposal. Most of the proposals that we see whenever we come into clients is a lot of the time they're doing product-based. Great, so here's a proposal. You're going to get this, 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 and this, as opposed to a rehash of all the business reasons about why we're partnering. And that's what a lot of people miss. So in a business-based proposal, this is what it looks like. In the very beginning of the proposal, I have a recap of the key objectives of here's what you're trying to accomplish. I heard you. Here are the 4 things that I heard that we're trying to accomplish. Right? So we're constantly, and if we're having a meeting and I'm walking them through the proposal, that's where I start every single time. Great, John. So from our conversations that we've had with the team, here are the 4 priorities that I've heard. Boom, boom, boom. Are those still the priorities? Yep, that's it. Yes, that's it. Great, good. Okay. Then I go through again in my proposal. You should have a version of this worldview with relevant case studies. I'm going to put some of those in here. So there's key capabilities, worldview. Again, these are testimonials that might be super relevant to their use case. Don't put a testimonial from Facebook in your proposal if they're a small trash pickup company. You know, put relevant case studies in here. You guys just need to have a treasure trove of 20 to 30 case studies that are not case studies, just what the client wanted, what they thought they needed, what we delivered, the results, basic stuff that's relevant to them. Blah, 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 right? It's your job to connect the dots. So then this next step, so I say, here's the reasons that we're going to partner. There are these 4 things. Here's how we've helped these relevant companies to do it. Based on those 4 problems you have, here's how we're going to solve that. 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 The beautiful part is you guys only solve for 6 things, so it's literally copying and pasting. Those key objectives, guess what, are going to be the same for most people. But I need the proposal to feel custom. You only solve for 5 things, you know? So it's cool. So for you, I'm just going to highlight, these are your top 2 priorities. And then I'm going to say, based on your priorities, here's the product and how we solve that. Based on this priority, here's the product and how we solve that. Right? It's your job to connect the dots for them. Here's your objective. Here's how we solve it. That's how the proposal's laid out. And then you just literally, all you're doing is copying and pasting. I literally, once you've created like 7 of these proposals, because it sounds like it's longer, you're like, oh man, it sounds like a lot of work. Once you've done this like 6 times, I'm just copying and pasting in the problems that Johnny Smith's organization had versus Rachel Smith's, and I'm just highlighting how we solve those relevant problems versus all the problems, right? Having like a one-size-fits-all. I'm telling you how we solve your business challenges, right? Then I have like a plan for implementation. So this is how we typically partner, right? We'll work to you, again, during this phase we do this, during this phase we do this, during this phase we do this, and then we move to production. This is how we typically partner with you, with somebody like you. Again, guess what? It's the same for everybody, but it feels custom, right? This whole proposal is like literally, it takes like a salesperson like 30 minutes to put together, 25 minutes to put together for like a big deal because you've already have the assets, right? And then we go into, so again, what's going to happen in month 1? This is what we're going to do. Month 2, this is what we're going to do. Month 3, this is what we're going to do. Month 4, this is how we partner. This is why you lose deals, is you don't do this. You lose deals because you don't tell me how you're actually going to implement it and deploy it. You make me have to think, okay, so what would we do in month 1? Okay, it would be this. What do we do in month 2? Or like week 2. It could be week 1, week 2, week 3. Most of you don't do this in your proposal. Or it feels super generic. As opposed to like, I want this to feel like very, very, very clear. These are all the steps that are going to happen as we partner together. So then whenever you go and turn around, I've said, these are your problems, you've agreed. I've told you exactly how we're going to solve for them, and I showed you how we're going to go live. That's all I can do in sales. That's all I can do to eliminate objections. Like at the end of it, like, and the good response at the end of a proposal call is like, okay. Like, not okay, like it's closed, but like, yeah, you've kind of disarmed, because I want to disarm every objection. Every single objection. And by doing your proposal this way, you disarm every single objection, right? How do we get started? Oh, I don't know. I'm just going to talk a little bit about proof of concept. If you do a proof of concept, a few of you do this, the reason that proof of concepts go long, so like let's say if that outcome from the proposal is like, great, so step 1 is we're going to do a proof of concept. What companies don't do is they don't say, great, so step 1 is we do a proof of concept. Typically, for us, a proof of concept is about 60 days. Over the course of that 60 days, here are the things that are going to happen. We're going to do this, this, and this. Then at the end of 60 days, here's what it looks like for us to partner over the course of like XYZ period. And this is what the costs look like. Companies think that they do it, but they don't do a very good job of actually spelling it all out, right? And they don't set up real KPIs for success around the proof of concept. So if you guys have to do a trial, never, ever, ever even go into a trial without setting up the KPIs for success. I will not go live with anything until we've all agreed that success looks like this, this, and this. And guess what? You need to set the success criteria. If you let the customer set the success criteria, they will pick random weird that you can't control. They will be like, well, we need to be able to, yeah, I think if we can save about 10%, that'd be good. No, it needs to be like, great, if we're able to onboard your doctors in an efficient fashion, they feel like they have the support they need to implement the tool, and we're able to save 2% of costs, would that be success to you? Yeah, that's success. Cool. You need to set the anchor for what it looks like versus having them set it. Customers will just always pull you down. And again, like that's the big issue. That's the reason why you have these proof of concepts that go long, is you don't have those difficult conversations before you ever go live. You get into proof of concept hell. You deploy a couple of devices. Oh, what do you think? How's it working? Oh, it's great, but no, we got to wait till Q1, as opposed to having those difficult conversations. Look, we typically do a proof of concept. It's 60 days. These are the meetings that we have over the course of that. On day 45, this is the conversation that we have. Then we're going to put together the proposal. We're going to talk about what next steps looks like. Chances are, as we deploy, it's going to be about X number of users. It's going to be X number of price. This is what it looks like. And it's just Groundhog Day. And for you guys in particular, you talked about it, what you're going through with big enterprise sales is you have a proof of concept, a proof of scale, and then you get a big deal. And that just is what it is, right? So if you're selling to Verizon, for example, you're selling, like for her, she's selling to car dealerships, right? Or part of her segment is. Let's say there's a 40 dealership group she runs into. They're not going to go from 0 to 40, right? Sure, there's these times that it'll happen, right? And chances are they're not going to go from 2 to 40. They'll go from, great, let's pilot it in this town. If that goes well, then they're going to roll it out to these 15, and then they roll it out to 40. And that's just what happens every time. It's a proof of concept, a proof that you can actually scale with me, and then I roll it out to everybody. Every sale's the same. If it's a bigger group, every single time. What's up? Well, hopefully, yeah, but I'm going to start that international conversation like here, and I'll put in the timeline about when we're going to start those conversations. That's going to be at day 120, right? Once we've proven this and we've done this, then we'll start to talk about international. This will be the parallel path that I go through in the US, and then we'll start the international at about this point. Bullshit. It moves slow because you're not setting the bars. Enterprise sales, it is a massive myth that enterprise sales move slow. They move slow because you don't set the bars. They move slow because you set up a proof of concept that's like, let's get in and see what happens. And you expect the product to sell itself. That they're going to be like, oh my God, this has transformed my business. I have to roll this out nationwide. If you just lay out the path for them, I can go from a very, very small deal to a massive deal in 18 months, easy. Because I'll already move you through to the proof of scale, to this, and because I'm going to also align all of this to your budget cycle. So I'm going to time all this to where it lands on like November or December, right? Or if your fiscal is there, June or July or whatever it is. The key is the reason enterprise deals go long is that exact reason. Like you don't project manage the other departments, and you do a terrible job on the POC. Not you, but like companies do a bad job on the POC. Like they just leave the POC up in the air, the proof of concept. And again, like the language I'm using is really important. We call it a proof of concept, not a pilot, not a trial. There's no trial. I'm not going to go in to this if we're not going to, without you understanding what the economics are going to look like out of the back end, because there's no point. We're going to have a very difficult conversation at the very beginning about what a partnership will look like post 60 days, or 30 days, or 15 days, whatever your trial looks like. You need to have those conversations up front whenever possible. Again, if you have a product that's based on data, then sometimes, you're saying it's a 60-day trial. On day 25, we're going to sit down and look at the data. Roughly, it might be between this range, but we'll have a more serious conversation then. Some certain products are more difficult. But that's why enterprise deals go long, man. It's literally, you're not micromanaging the people because you feel like you're a victim to them. Like, oh, they're big, they're bureaucratic, oh, it takes time, oh, Like, no, it doesn't, man. I can go from zero. We went from, one of our clients, we went from in 0 stores to a $4 million deal in like 10 months because we just laid it out. If we do this, we do this, and then if we do this, we do this, if we do this, we do this. Again, they don't all move that fast, but I know that I have a much higher likelihood of success when I set it up that way. I can go from 0 to a few 100,000 real quick. It's like a Drake song. That's my ringtone when I wake up. Okay, and then you show the proposal or price. I recap the issues, talk about worldview, show you how we solve those very specific issues, talk about the plan for implementation, and then price and products. And that's the proposal. Like that's how you guys have to present it. Here's the key objectives, here's how we solve those key objectives, and then here's what the pricing looks like for this, right? A couple of questions that you guys might have. I'm sure you will have a lot of them. I talked about that a little bit. Pricing, what if they bring up pricing on the first call, right? It's a common question. What do they do? $2,500 sale is different. I would come right out and punch them in the mouth with it. I'd be like, it's $2,500. Like, I wouldn't shy away from it. For the most of you, though, if you have like a mid-level product, give a range. Not a lot of you have, some of you have month-to-month pricing or like typical SaaS pricing. It's okay if like you know exactly what it's going to be, like I'm okay with it. But typically what we'll do is we're going to give a range. Have any of you, there's a book by this economist, it's called Thinking Fast and Slow. Have any of you ever heard of this book? I know he's read it. It's good though, I like it, man. These are good books. Thinking Fast and Slow, it's a great book. He talks a lot about pricing theory. And he talks a lot about, again, our human brain, we really struggle to understand price in a vacuum. If I'm like, it's $5,000, you're like, that's expensive, right? But if it's like, great, so for a company like yours, it could be between, $4,200 and $6,000, and then I tell you it's $5,000, you're like, oh, okay, that seems like a deal, right? So if you're gonna give a range, if I know that the product's gonna be like $4K a month, on the very first call, I probably have an idea like that's what it's gonna be. The quote I'm gonna give you is like, probably for a company your size, it's gonna be between probably like 3.5, 3.6, and 5K per month. Guess what number they hear? that's expensive, or not, or you're like, oh, yeah, okay, all right. They're reacting to this number because they're going to hear the high-end number. And so then, again, if I hear things like, yeah, okay, great, yeah, that's awesome, that's perfect, that's where I need to be, then I'm like 5.2. You know what I mean? Like, this is going to be on, like, the mid-side of the anchor. And it's close enough to hear that they're not going to beat me up too much. So again, like, the anchor has to be close. Like, you can't say between, like, 3.6 and, like, 20. Then it's not an effective anchor. But again, if I say, like, it's probably for a company your size, it's like 3.6 to 5. Because I already know we're going to end up at about 4. Now I've set your expectation, it's going to be 5. But if you react, again, if you don't react, like, overly positive, you react normal, like, okay, yeah, that should be, like, doable. And I come in at 4, you're like, oh, we got a deal. As opposed to if I say the price is 4K. Again, this is just like a stupid human nature thing. Like, we just value this more, right? The other is, like, if you're ever going to present options, you always present options in 3s. And you frame the middle option, right? And the way that you think about that is, like, option 1 is a smart car. You guys have smart cars? Yeah, kind of. Do you guys know what smart cars are? They're like really small boxes, right? Okay, smart cars. Great, nice cars, good cars. If any of you have one, nice car. The next car is a fully loaded Camry. It has everything you can imagine. And the third option is a Mercedes. Which option do you think every single person picks? Every single one, right? Because I basically said it kind of has all the options of this, but the price is actually closer to this. Like, well, this is a good deal. Never give options in 2s, always give it in 3, and always frame the middle option. So it's like, great, with you guys, you probably see this on websites as a consumer you visit. You see, oh, we've got this plan, this plan, this plan, and this plan. And it's like the most popular plan. And it's like, well, look, I get all this stuff, but it's, this is $99, and this is $199, and this is $79. Yeah, I architected this whole thing so you pick $99. All of that pricing you see is just this. It's framing. So same thing if you ever do. I'm actually a big fan most of the time of just presenting one price. Like, if I know what the problem is and what it is, like, here's what I think we can do. But if you ever have to present options, present it in 3 and frame the middle option like this. If you ever have to do it. And again, people are like, oh, wow, that's a good deal. Like, I know. Because they never buy the catalog. Like, once in 4 years, someone will be like, oh, yeah, well, we want that thing. You're like, okay. All right, cool. All right. That's the sales process, y'all. I live in Texas now, so I can say y'all. What other questions? What other objections keep coming up? Again, this is really what I wanted to walk you guys through, is just, again, like, these are the steps of a grown-up sales process. You have a discovery process that has these steps. You then have these bigger meetings that you need to control the outcomes on. You then have a proposal that you need to walk people through, and the proposal has to have the exact steps that I just said in it. Like, and I promise you, again, like, the ideal outcome from those meetings, again, is what I just said. It's like, okay, like, you've answered our questions. Now we need to go make a business decision. We'll come back to you. Like, cool, awesome. Like, if you're doing enterprise sales, like, that's as good as it's going to get. Like, they're not going to be like, yeah, we're getting ready to write you a $500,000 check right here on the spot, Jake. Bring the contract. Like, it's unfortunately not in the first meeting. It won't happen. So, all right. What questions do you all have about the sales process? Like, I think about the things that we've talked about here, sales process. Bringing new tech to market, that's where the worldview comes in. Talking business value versus product, just talked about that. Value, sales cycle. Yeah, I think we've covered most of this stuff. But if we haven't, let's talk about what questions we have to kind of wrap up here over the next 10 minutes. So many questions. Oh man, here we go.
You talked a bit about the divide and conquer technique in the meeting stages.
Yep.
How do you deal with when you get like a group email and the meeting is kind of CC'd everybody on that email because he just doesn't want to deal with the decision? He wants to put the tech guy there and the IT guy there, but you don't want to necessarily reply to all on that meeting. Is there a technique to kind of deal with that?
So whenever they reply, have you already had the meeting? Or he's like, hey, you guys go deal with this?
So you've had an initial meeting.
Yep.
It's maybe been positive, and then you get the correspondence then goes to email, and the strategy of the main buyer or the CEO or whatever has been CC everybody on the, he wants everybody to know everything about everything. I find you do get that kind of culture in some companies.
Yeah, definitely.
But you need to break that down as a sales guy to divide and conquer. So how do you do that via email?
Yeah, well, step one is after that first meeting, get better at setting the next steps, right? So that email doesn't surprise you, right? So if at the end of the first meeting, instead, you're talking to the CEO, it's like, great, just accept that you're going to have to go talk to those people. That's my whole point for this. If in sales, you guys just accept the suck, that you're going to have to go talk to these people. Like, it just is what it is. And you say, great, CEO, so typical next step, obviously, you're not going to be in the day-to-day. It sounds like your operations team. So if you can send an email, introduce me to operations, we can talk that. And it sounds like we'll also have to talk to marketing. If you can make an email intro, we'll talk to marketing as well, too. And then we can all circle back in about maybe a week and a half. Does that work for you, Kent?
So you're setting the agenda earlier than...
I don't let it get to that point.
Let it get to that point, yeah. Okay.
I should know who needs to be involved so I can help to set it. But if that does happen, I would do the exact same thing. I'd reply to all. I'd be like, hey, Kent, I really enjoyed our conversation. Rest of the team, I'm looking forward to talking to you about what we do. Typically, we'll now have a couple of different meetings. Marketing, I think that's Valerie and John. Let's set up some time for whatever. Ricky, that's blah, blah, blah. Let's set up some time for next week. And then let's do a big circle back at the end of next week.
Yeah. Which might mean ignoring some of the questions on the email. You might just need to cut through that, yeah?
Yeah, there's most objections that come up in those big meetings, it's a random thought that literally just popped in that person's head and came out of their mouth. 90% of objections are like, well, can it integrate with blah, blah? Like, shut up, dude. I know, that's a great question mark. That's exactly what we're going to talk about next week. That's why I do it. I've just done this so many times. I know IT is going to do it to me every time. And I just can't let him do it. I can't let him do it. I can't let Mark do that to me. So it's that's why, and embrace that you're going to have separate meetings. You're going to have to get buy-in from the end users. Dude, trust me, if I could just teach you, there's some, just sell to the decision maker, I'd tell you that. You know what I mean? So I just give up all hope. That's my advice. Give up all hope that there's going to be some magic, that happens. All right, what else? Maybe let's just do this. Maybe we can do some takeaways or questions. So maybe let's just do a round real quick. Maybe top takeaway questions that you guys have, and we'll wrap it up. So we can go here. My data scientist guy, what about you, man, coming into this?
I just had one question first.
Okay, that's fine. We can do the question as we go through it, too.
Okay. It has to do with the meetings and things. So in some cases, we have conversations with users where we never actually speak to them on the phone. We only have email conversations, and we close that way. So
Right.
Would you alter this process at all if there was no phone call or meeting?
I would just wonder how many deals you're losing by doing it this way.
So you think maybe we should alter it and have...
I would have probably try to set up a first meeting with most of these people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I wouldn't assume, I wouldn't think about how many people I'm closing. I'd be thinking about how many people I'm losing. And then dude, then if it turns out that it's the same number, then go straight back to email.
Mm-hmm.
But my gut tells me you're losing deals because you're only relying on people who have super, super high intent and are super, super interested in the product as opposed to people who you're going to need to just get over that hump.
Right.
That phone call is going to hurt you.
Okay.
It won't hurt you to do a 20-minute phone call.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, Tyler.
All right, our data scientists. I want to hear it, man.
No questions, really. You addressed everything that I had. My, I guess, preconceptions coming in.
Okay,
so
good.
thank you for that. But biggest takeaway is using data and research to make decisions and setting the agenda, not being passive in the relationship building. I didn't realize how active salespeople had to be in quarterbacking the whole process. So
that's good, man.
Really great.
That's a good appreciation. Good salespeople.
Yeah, I won't be emailing proposals anymore. And all of the other mistakes I've been making, but yeah.
That's good. And the thing is, it's such a good one. It's so easy to just stop doing. You know what I mean? And you'll see an immediate impact. And people won't say no to you. They'll be like, okay, yeah, cool. I'll set up 5 minutes to walk me through it. Yeah. Yeah, you can do that. Sure. Yeah.
I think the usage of typically, normally, that's great language.
Yeah.
It flows well and sets the norm, right? So
yeah, good.
that's
what'll help to create momentum in the deal.
yeah.
is if
Even
you
when you don't necessarily have the control over all of it, you can start inserting it that way.
Yeah, you have to believe you do. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm delusional, but
Yeah.
That way.
As an actual engineer, not a salesperson, I think the whole thing was a takeaway for me. More specifically, understanding the pipeline that salespeople go through, just so when they're making decisions, I can, sort of draw on that and understand what they're going through and how it relates to product that I'm developing.
Awesome,
So
man.
I thought it was great. I
Good,
don't have
man.
any questions. You were great.
cool, awesome,
Yep.
man. Glad.
Yeah, I would say key takeaways. I mean, I've been in sales for a long time, but it's always interesting to see how the new technology is enhancing the sales
Yeah.
process. And for our group, I think we're doing a lot of great things, but then watching you realizing we're doing a lot of wrong things, which is a good thing to find out.
Yeah, I mean,
'Cause
most of
it's
the
more
companies
stuff
we
we
even
can
work with,
fix.
like, you got 70 or 80% of it. It's just like structuring it a lot of the times. That's awesome.
Yeah, I guess my big takeaway is the idea of using the analogy of a project management to kind of keep you in the driver's seat so that you can manage the process and not risk losing those ones that fall between, the ones that go dark.
Cool.
For me, my biggest takeaway was the amount of technology out there to help improve sales, and also the 50% of the work before you actually send an email, doing all the research of that one person you're looking for.
Yeah.
That was never even thought of that, but
Good.
it's pretty good. I like that.
Yeah, anytime in sales you're doing anything manual, chances are like there's a technology for that. Like more and more it's becoming that way.
Yeah, same thing here with the appreciation for all the helpful technology that'll be out there.
Good.
So for a small business, if you can tap into that technology, then it greatly magnifies your capabilities.
Great.
The other thing too is that while the general slant was for B2B for your presentation, okay, it's a great big picture for a B2C who eventually could go to a B2B.
Definitely.
Okay? And you can fit in so much of the what I should be doing now and what I don't have to do until later. So
Yeah,
it
good.
helps greatly with perspective.
Good.
Okay.
Big takeaways for me. I mean, there's lots of stuff right off the bat. Always define and agree to the next step before getting off the phone. That was a big thing. But also, looking 3-4 months down the road, it's understanding what I need to do to be able to set up a salesperson that will hire for success.
Exactly right,
What
man.
can I do as an executive to make his path to success work?
Yep, exactly.
Similar takeaways for me. The BANT one was really huge.
Okay,
I
good.
love just easy to remember, quick, clean, and
BANT.
I wouldn't have asked for all 4 of those.
Yeah.
So that's very useful. Also, the worldview angle
Yep,
and
good.
being able to kind of compare and contrast with kind of fishermen as your customers, being able to kind of frame them up right from the get-go because they have some varying views. Very much appreciated.
Cool.
I've learned a lot. The tech stack was a big one for us as well. I've learned how more efficient we can be by bringing in the different tech things. Also, speaking to the common big issue and relating it back to them, that's a huge one that's going to benefit us, that we're not using specific stats from medical journals that we could be using right now to explain the bigger issue. We're more so keeping it, explaining their knee pain, and that's going to be huge for people because you can't argue someone else's statistics. So that was helpful.
Good, awesome.
Yeah.
To me, the biggest takeaway was all around the process, and for us, I think it's a little bit of being more assertive throughout the whole process to drive it. So just from my seat, I just want to see that process and how we're taking over. I saw a lot of common themes around, how you describe to sort of drive them through it. And maybe we're a little bit too Canadian in our approach. So
it's not just Canadian. Man.
I just want
the
to make
problems
sure
you
we
have
sort of
are-
take that polite way to sort of drive people through the process.
Cool.
So coming from primarily engineering background, I think a lot of it was very eye-opening. So lots of questions and things that I need to look up. But you know, getting some insight into how the sales process works, and knowing that we have to go when we get a salesperson to feed them a system and something to work off of, not just throw them into it and hope for the best.
Yeah.
But then the idea of well, one, going 2 layers deep to really understand what they're looking for, you know, that I think is going to be extremely helpful going forward. And your comments on, you know, where we're in the prototyping stage, not to confuse a sales call with a product feedback.
Yep. That's good, man.
I think I definitely would have done that. So
that's okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. No. Awesome. Yeah, I guess not everyone needs to give like a takeaway. I guess like we don't all have to do. I mean, I like it. It's kind of like a little like mini compliment, like or whatever. But no, I mean, I think I mean, again, it's just I think everyone hearing it, kind of reinforcing it, can help. I mean, we don't have to go through like every single person here, but if there are questions that you guys have, I mean, my man, I don't want to like take it away from you if you want to, you know, share away. But you know, really, guys, like I think a lot of you are at really early stages, and so. The key is I think we've covered a lot of stuff, and just take it one step at a time. Like what I've tried to do is give you guys kind of like a mini blueprint for a lot of this stuff, but it's about step one, just go do that. I showed you guys how to do outbound earlier. Just start with that. You know what I mean? You need to build a sales playbook. I just told you the chapters you're going to need to have. You need a discovery process. You need a script for how you start the meeting. You need a way to talk about your worldview. You need a way to demo. Like just start to like bang this stuff out over the course of months. All right.
Actually, coming from a strictly engineering background, this whole thing was kind of an eye-opener for me, specifically with the
I love engineers. It's my favorite.
Yeah, kind of technology that goes into actually building up your sales. The one thing that I found a bit lacking was specifically for startups who haven't made their first sale yet. How do you approach your first few sales, say, the first year or the second year, or what kind of customers should you avoid? What kind of customers should you keep in touch with? Because early in your program, some customers might say, oh, I want this, and that doesn't really align well with what you're trying to develop. So
Right.
should you be swayed by what they want, or do you want to be focused and just develop?
It's not a black and white answer, man. It's not as black and white as like, if you think about, how many of you have read Steve Blank, 4 Steps to the Epiphany? It's like one of the most classic startup books. What? You guys, all of you should have read this book. Like 4 Steps to the Epiphany is like it is like the pre-lean startup Eric Ries, but it's called the product development model versus the customer development model. And it's a really tough to know like how much is an MVP or how much should you iterate based on customer feedback versus trying to take the market somewhere. So yeah, man, hit me up. I'm happy to give you more insight.
Thank you.
4 Steps to the Epiphany. It's by Steve Blank. He's a professor at Stanford.
Anybody else that had a question? No?
A lot of stuff. All right, cool. Well, awesome. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun getting to know all of you as well, too.
Well, first of all, Jake, thank you very much for taking the time to come and
meet with us. Yeah, of course, man. Thank you so. It's okay now. After the meeting, you can thank them. I'm okay with that. I'm okay afterwards, like, hey, thanks. I enjoyed the conversation, but it's different. Is there appropriate times to say thank you? Just not then.
Yeah. Very seriously, though, thank you very much for
thank you, Bob. I
sharing
appreciate
your
you having
wisdom.
me, man.
Really appreciate you coming up again.
Bob.